My name is Janice, and at 52 years old, I thought I understood the depths of love and sacrifice. Sitting here in my sewing room looking at the unfinished scarf on my needles, I realize that some words can never be taken back. The silence in this house feels different now, heavier somehow. There are moments when even a mother's love has its limits, when the heart finally says enough. I never imagined that three little words could shatter everything I had built over 19 years. Sometimes the gifts we pour our souls into become the very things that teach us the hardest lessons about respect and worth. Before I share what happened with the last handmade gift I ever made, I would love to know where you are watching from today. Please hit that like button if this story resonates with you, and don't forget to subscribe for more real-life stories that matter. Now let me tell you about the gift that changed everything. To understand what happened, you need to know how we got here. My journey as a single mother began 8 years ago, when my husband David passed away from a sudden heart attack. Emma was only 11 then, and I became everything for her. Father, mother, provider, protector. I work as an accountant at a small family firm downtown, making a modest $42,000 a year. It is not much, but it pays our bills and keeps food on the table. What most people do not know is that I have been living two lives. During the day, I crunch numbers and balance books. But in the evenings and weekends, I transform into something entirely different. I have been knitting and embroidering since I was 7 years old. My grandmother taught me these skills during long summer afternoons in her tiny apartment. Her arthritic hands would guide mine as we created beautiful things from simple yarn and thread. She always said that when you make something with your hands, you put a piece of your soul into it. After David died, these skills became more than just a hobby. They became our lifeline. I started selling hand-knitted scarves, baby blankets, and embroidered pillowcases at local craft fairs. Every weekend, Emma would help me set up our little booth, arranging the colorful creations with pride. She would tell customers about how I stayed up late, making each piece special. Those were different times. Emma used to love watching me work. She would curl up next to me on the couch while I knitted, asking questions about different stitches and patterns. I made her sweaters for school, delicate hair accessories, and even a beautiful prom dress when she was 16. She wore everything with such joy, telling her friends that her mum was the most talented person in the world. But college changed things. Emma received a partial scholarship to State University, but we still needed money for housing books and living expenses. I knew from the moment she was born that I wanted her to have every opportunity I never had. So I made a promise to myself and to David's memory that our daughter would never have to worry about college costs. For 15 years, I saved every extra penny. I worked overtime whenever possible, sometimes staying at the office until 9 in the evening to earn those precious overtime dollars. I took on weekend bookkeeping jobs for small businesses. I sold my handmade items, not just for fun, but to add every single dollar to Emma's college fund. I sacrificed things that other people take for granted. I have not bought myself new clothes in 3 years. I drive a 13-year-old Honda with a rattling exhaust pipe because car payments would mean less money for Emma's future. I clip coupons religiously and shop sales like my life depends on it. When my friends invite me out for dinner or weekend trips, I always decline with a smile, saying I prefer staying home. By the time Emma started her sophomore year, I had managed to save $45,000. Every sacrifice felt worth it when I imagined her graduation day when she would walk across that stage debt-free. She used to call me her hero for making it all possible. But somewhere between freshman and sophomore year, things shifted. Emma started spending more time with new friends from wealthy families. She began making comments about our small house, our old furniture, our simple lifestyle. The girl who once treasured my handmade gifts started looking at them differently. Still, I held on to hope. Her 20th birthday was approaching, and I wanted to do something special, something that would remind her of the bond we used to share, something that would bring back the daughter who once thought I hung the moon. That is when I decided to create the most beautiful, meaningful gift I had ever made in my life. The idea came to me during a sleepless night in February. I wanted to make Emma something that would capture all the love and memories we had shared. After hours of sketching and planning, I decided on a cashmere cardigan with an intricate pattern of small flowers. Each flower would represent a special moment from her childhood. But this would not be just any cardigan. I researched for weeks to find the perfect pattern. I wanted something sophisticated enough for a college student, but with personal touches that only Emma would understand. The roses would represent her first school play when she was 6. The daisies would symbolize our summer camping trips. The tiny violets would remind her of the flower crown I made for her 8th birthday. Finding the right materials became my obsession. I saved every penny for 3 months, skipping lunches and walking to work instead of driving to save gas money. Finally, I had enough to purchase genuine Scottish cashmere yarn in Emma's favorite shade of sage green. $300 felt like a fortune, but I knew she deserved the finest quality. The pattern I chose was incredibly complex. It required a technique called Fair Isle knitting, where you work with multiple colors to create intricate designs. I had attempted Fair Isle only once before, years ago, and it had taken me months to master even simple patterns. This design would push my skills to their absolute limit. Every evening after work, I would sit in my sewing room with a cup of tea and my knitting needles. The first few weeks were frustrating as I made mistake after mistake. I had to rip out entire sections and start over multiple times. My fingers would cramp from holding the needles for hours, but I pushed through the pain. As winter turned to spring, the cardigan began to take shape. The front panels featured cascading flowers that seemed to dance across the fabric. The sleeves had delicate vine patterns that spiraled from wrist to shoulder. The back showcased a stunning tree design with different flowers representing the 4 seasons of Emma's life. I worked during my lunch breaks, hiding the project in my desk drawer. My co-workers thought I was being unusually antisocial, but I could not risk Emma discovering her surprise. On weekends, I would knit for 8 or 10 hours straight, my back aching, but my heart full of purpose. The attention to detail was extraordinary. I used 7 different shades of green for the leaves and stems. The flower petals required tiny French knots in pink, yellow, purple, and white. Each flower had a slightly different design, making the overall effect look like a natural garden rather than a repeated pattern. By April, my social life had completely disappeared. Friends stopped inviting me places because I always declined. My sister worried that I was becoming isolated, but I could not explain without ruining the surprise. This gift had to be perfect. It had to show Emma everything I could not put into words about how much she meant to me. The most challenging part was the finishing work. I hand-stitched delicate mother-of-pearl buttons that cost $12 each. I lined the inside with silk fabric in a complementary lavender shade. I even embroidered Emma's initials in tiny script inside the left front panel, where only she would see them. 3 weeks before her birthday, I finally completed the last stitch. Sitting back in my chair, I held up the most beautiful garment I had ever created. The flowers seemed to glow in the lamplight, and the cashmere felt like liquid silk between my fingers. I imagined Emma's face when she opened the box, imagined her understanding all the love and thought that went into every single detail. I carefully wrapped the cardigan in tissue paper and placed it in an elegant gift box I had been saving for a special occasion. For the first time in months, I allowed myself to feel proud of what I had accomplished. This was not just a sweater. This was a love letter, written in yarn and stitches, a masterpiece that captured 19 years of devotion. As I planned her birthday celebration, I pictured Emma wearing the cardigan perhaps to class or on a coffee date with friends. I imagined her thinking of me every time she put it on, remembering that she was loved beyond measure. I had no idea that in just 3 weeks, that beautiful gift would become the catalyst for the most painful moment of my entire life. Emma's 20th birthday fell on a perfect Saturday in May. I had spent the entire morning decorating our small living room with soft pink streamers and flowers from our backyard garden. Nothing fancy, but everything chosen with care to create a warm, loving atmosphere for my daughter's celebration. I had invited 5 people: Emma's high school friend Jessica, who still lived in town, and 4 of her college friends she'd been talking about all semester: Sarah, Madison, Tyler, and Jake. From Emma's stories, I knew they came from very different backgrounds than ours, but I was excited to finally meet the people who were part of her new world. When Emma arrived at 2 in the afternoon, she looked stunning, but somehow distant. She wore an expensive-looking dress I had never seen before, and carried a designer purse that probably cost more than my monthly grocery budget. Her friends arrived in 2 luxury cars that looked ridiculously out of place in our modest neighborhood. Sarah stepped out of a gleaming white BMW, wearing head-to-toe designer clothes. Her handbag alone probably cost more than I make in a month. Madison emerged from a silver Mercedes, diamonds sparkling at her ears and throat. The boys, Tyler and Jake, looked like they had stepped off the pages of a prep school catalogue, with their perfectly styled hair and clothes that screamed money. I greeted everyone warmly, but I immediately sensed something different about Emma. Around her college friends, she seemed like a stranger. Her voice changed, taking on an affected tone I had never heard before. She avoided making eye contact with me and kept apologizing for our simple decorations and basic refreshments. The gift opening began with Emma's friends presenting their offerings. Sarah gave her a delicate gold necklace from Tiffany that made Emma squeal with delight. Madison's gift was a leather handbag from Coach that Emma immediately recognized as being absolutely perfect. Tyler and Jake went in together on the newest iPhone model, complete with a designer case. Each gift was met with genuine enthusiasm and grateful hugs. Emma photographed everything for social media, gushing about how incredible her friends were. I watched from the kitchen doorway, arranging cookies on a plate, feeling increasingly nervous about my own contribution. When it came time for my gift, I carried the beautiful white box to the coffee table, with hands that trembled slightly. The room fell quiet as I placed it in front of Emma. I had planned a little speech about the meaning behind each flower, about the hours of love I had stitched into every row. But looking at Emma's face as she lifted the lid, I felt my planned words die in my throat. Her expression was not the joy and wonder I had imagined during all those months of careful work. Instead, I saw disappointment flicker across her features before she quickly tried to hide it. She lifted the cardigan from its tissue paper nest, and I heard Madison whisper something to Sarah that made them both smirk. The cashmere caught the afternoon light beautifully, the intricate flower pattern clearly visible, but nobody seemed to notice the craftsmanship or the obvious time investment. Emma held it up briefly, forcing a smile that did not reach her eyes. The room felt awkwardly quiet as her friends examined my gift with barely concealed judgment. I could see them exchanging glances, and I knew they were comparing my handmade offering to their expensive store-bought presents. "Thanks, Mum," Emma said. Finally, her voice flat and obligatory. "It is really, nice. Very warm-looking." I waited for more. I waited for her to notice the flowers, to ask about the pattern, to understand what she was holding. But she was already folding it back into the box, clearly eager to move on to something else. The gift that had consumed 4 months of my life was dismissed in less than 30 seconds. As the afternoon progressed, I tried to be a good hostess, but I could not shake the feeling that something fundamental had shifted. Emma seemed embarrassed by our modest home, by my simple clothes, by everything that represented our real life together. I had no idea that the worst was yet to come. As the afternoon wore on, Emma's friends dominated the conversation with talk of spring break trips to Europe, summer internships at their parents' companies, and shopping expeditions to Manhattan. I tried to contribute occasionally, but it became clear that my world and theirs had no common ground. Sarah was in the middle of describing her new apartment near campus when she suddenly turned her attention back to Emma's gifts. The expensive items were displayed on the coffee table like trophies, while my cardigan remained hidden in its box. "Emma, you should try on that sweater thing," Sarah said with a tone that immediately put me on edge. "I want to see how it looks," Madison giggled. "Oh yes, model it for us. I love seeing unique pieces." I felt a chill run down my spine at the word unique. There was something in the way she said it that made it sound like an insult rather than a compliment. Emma's face flushed slightly. "Oh, I do not think it really goes with this dress. Maybe later." But her friends were persistent. Tyler, perhaps genuinely trying to be supportive, said, "Come on, Em. Your mum obviously worked really hard on it. The least you can do is show it off." The pressure mounted until Emma finally reluctantly pulled the cardigan from its box again. As she stood up to put it on, I felt a mixture of excitement and apprehension. This was the moment I had been dreaming about for months. The cardigan fit perfectly as I knew it would. The sage green complemented her complexion beautifully, and the intricate flower pattern was even more stunning against her dark hair. For a brief moment, seeing my creation on my daughter, I felt a surge of pride and accomplishment. But the room's reaction was not what I had hoped for. The silence stretched too long, and when Madison finally spoke, her voice dripped with false sweetness. "It is so rustic," she said, and I could hear the judgment beneath her words. "Very homemade looking." Sarah nodded in agreement. "It is definitely got that handcrafted vibe, so different from anything you would find in actual stores." Jake, perhaps not understanding the undercurrent of cruelty in the conversation, added, "Yeah, it looks like something my grandmother would make. Very traditional." I watched Emma's face grow redder with each comment. She was clearly mortified to be wearing something that her sophisticated friends found so obviously inferior to their designer gifts. I wanted to speak up to explain the hours of work, the expensive materials, the love behind every stitch. But something in Emma's expression warned me to stay silent. Then Sarah, with the casual cruelty that only comes from privilege and youth, delivered the blow that would change everything. "So, Emma," she said with a laugh that sounded like breaking glass, "where did this come from? Please tell me you did not actually pay money for this." The room fell silent. Emma looked trapped, embarrassed, desperate to fit in with these people who clearly saw my gift as a source of entertainment. I held my breath, waiting for her response, praying that my daughter would stand up for the love and effort I had poured into her gift. Instead, Emma glanced quickly in my direction, saw me watching from the kitchen doorway, and then looked back at her friends with the expression I will never forget. "Oh God, no," she said, her voice filled with embarrassment and disdain. "This is just some cheap thing my mum made. It is not like it is real fashion or anything special." The words hit me like a physical blow. Cheap. She called months of my life, hundreds of dollars of materials, and countless hours of love cheap, in front of everyone, while I stood there listening. Her friends erupted in laughter. Madison clapped her hands together. "Oh my God, I was wondering why it looked so weird." Homemade explains everything. Tyler shook his head in amusement. Dude, your mum has serious grandmother vibes. This thing looks like it belongs in a church basement craft sale. Jake could not stop laughing. Next time, just ask for cash, Em. Then you can buy something actually worth wearing. Through it all, Emma smiled and laughed along, basking in her friend's approval, while my heart shattered into 1,000 pieces. She never once defended me, never once mentioned the time and effort involved, never once showed any appreciation for what I had tried to give her. I stood in that doorway, invisible and forgotten, watching my daughter choose her new friends over the woman who had sacrificed everything for her happiness. The gift I had poured my soul into had become a joke, and Emma was the one telling it. Without saying a word, I turned and walked upstairs to my bedroom. I could hear their laughter continuing below as I closed the door behind me. For the first time in 8 years since David's death, I allowed myself to cry with complete abandon. But even as the tears fell, something else was growing inside me. Something harder and colder than grief. Something that would change both our lives forever. That night, after Emma's friends finally left, I lay in my bed staring at the ceiling while my daughter moved around downstairs as if nothing had happened. I could hear her washing dishes, turning off lights, getting ready for bed, with the same casual routine she had followed for years. She never came upstairs to check on me. She never knocked on my bedroom door to ask if I was okay. She never acknowledged that anything hurtful had occurred. It was as if those devastating words had never been spoken, as if my pain was completely invisible to her. I spent hours replaying every sacrifice I had made over the past 19 years. Every time I worked late to earn extra money for her college fund. Every birthday when I told her I did not need gifts, because seeing her happy was enough. Every dinner of peanut butter sandwiches I ate while making sure she had proper meals. I remembered the Christmas when she was 15 and wanted an expensive winter coat that all her friends were wearing. I worked double shifts for 6 weeks to afford it, telling her it was from Santa because I wanted her to feel special. I remember how proudly she wore that coat to school, how happy she was to fit in with her classmates. Now here I was 3 years later, and my own daughter was ashamed to be associated with anything I created. The next morning, Emma appeared in the kitchen as if it were any other day. She made herself coffee and toast, chatting casually about her plans to return to campus later that week. When I remained quiet, she seemed puzzled rather than concerned. "Are you okay, Mum? You seem weird this morning." I looked at my daughter. Really looked at her and saw a stranger. The girl who used to help me set up craft fair booths was gone, replaced by someone who found my efforts embarrassing and worthless. "I am fine," I said quietly. "Just tired." She nodded absently and went back to scrolling through her phone, probably posting pictures of her expensive birthday gifts on social media. I noticed she had not taken any photos of the cardigan. An hour later, as I was getting ready for work, Emma appeared in my bedroom doorway with a familiar expression. It was the look she got when she needed something from me when she was about to ask for money. "Mum, I need to go shopping before I head back to school. My friends invited me to this really nice restaurant next weekend, and I do not have anything appropriate to wear. Could I get maybe $200? I promise I will pay you back when I get my summer job." $200 for one outfit, for one dinner with the same friends who had mocked my gift the day before. I stared at my daughter. This person I had devoted my entire adult life to supporting and nurturing, and felt something fundamental break inside me. She was asking me to fund her efforts to impress the very people who had ridiculed me in my own home. "I will think about it," I said finally. Emma looked surprised. I had never made her wait for money before. When she needed something, I had always found a way to provide it, no matter what I had to sacrifice. But as I drove to work that morning, I was not thinking about Emma's shopping needs. I was thinking about the $45,000 sitting in our joint savings account, the college fund that represented 15 years of my life, 15 years of choosing her future over my present comfort. By lunchtime, I had made up my mind. I left the office early, telling my boss I had a family emergency that required immediate attention. In a way, it was true. This was definitely an emergency, and it was definitely about family. The bank was busy, but I waited patiently in line, my heart pounding with a mixture of terror and determination. When the teller called me forward, I presented my identification and account information with steady hands. "I need to close this account and withdraw all funds," I said quietly. The teller looked surprised. "All of it?" "That is quite a substantial amount, Mrs. Patterson. Are you sure you would not prefer to transfer most of it to a different type of account?" "No," I replied firmly. "I want all of it in cash." $45,000 in cash feels heavier than you might expect. The bank manager had to approve the transaction, and they insisted on providing me with a cashier's check instead of actual bills for security reasons. I accepted the check and immediately drove to a different bank across town, where I opened a new account in my name only. The money was mine. I had earned every penny through my own labor and sacrifice. Emma's name was on the account only because I had intended it for her education, but nowhere was it written that I could not change my mind. As I sat in my car outside the second bank, holding the deposit receipt for my new account, I felt something I had not experienced in years. I felt powerful. I felt in control of my own life. For the first time since David's death, I had made a decision based on what I needed, rather than what someone else expected from me. I drove home and went directly to my sewing room. The unfinished scarf I had been working on before Emma's birthday sat exactly where I had left it. I picked up my knitting needles and began to work each stitch steady and deliberate. Emma would discover what I had done soon enough. College tuition was due in just over a week, and she would need access to the account to pay for her full semester. When that moment came, she would learn that actions have consequences, that love and respect are not one-way streets, and that even mothers have limits. For now, I knitted in peaceful silence, finally free from the burden of funding someone else's ingratitude. 3 days later, my phone rang at exactly 11:30 in the morning. I was at work reviewing quarterly reports for a client when Emma's name appeared on my screen. I knew immediately what this call was about. "Mum." Her voice was higher than usual, strained with panic. "I am at the bursar's office trying to pay for next semester, and there is some kind of problem with our account. They are saying it is empty. There must be some mistake." I set down my pen and looked out the window at the busy street below. People were hurrying to lunch meetings, running errands, living their normal lives while my daughter's world was about to change forever. "There is no mistake, Emma." The silence on the other end of the line stretched so long I wondered if the call had dropped. Finally, in a whisper, she said, "What do you mean?" "I withdrew the money of it. The account is closed." Another long pause, then an explosion of disbelief. "You what, Mum?" "That is my college fund. You cannot just take it. I need that money for school. Registration closes tomorrow. What am I supposed to do?" For 19 years, I had dropped everything whenever Emma needed me. I had rearranged my schedule, my priorities, my entire life around her wants and needs. But sitting at my desk that morning, I felt remarkably calm. "You will figure it out," I said quietly, "the same way millions of other students do." "Are you insane?" Emma's voice was getting louder, more frantic. "Mum, this is my education we are talking about. My future. You cannot destroy my life because you are having some kind of breakdown. The word breakdown stung, but it also clarified something for me. Emma still did not understand what she had done wrong. In her mind, I was the one behaving unreasonably. Tell me something, Emma, I said, leaning back in my chair. Do you remember what you said about my birthday gift? What What does that have to do with anything? We are talking about my college fund. Answer the question. I could hear her breathing heavily, trying to control her panic. I do not know what you mean. I said thank you for the sweater. What else was I supposed to say? You called it cheap, Emma. In front of your friends. You said it was not anything special. Oh, for God's sake, she snapped. You are doing this because I hurt your feelings about some stupid knitting project, Mum, grow up. So what if I did not go crazy over your homemade gift that does not give you the right to sabotage my entire future? Stupid knitting project. The words hung in the air between us, confirming everything I had realized over the past few days. Emma truly did not understand the magnitude of what I had given her, or the cruelty of what she had taken away. Emma, I said slowly, that stupid knitting project took me 4 months to complete. I worked on it every single evening after my job. The materials alone cost $300. Do you know how many dinners of peanut butter sandwiches that represents? Do you know how many times I walked to work instead of driving to save gas money so I could afford that cashmere? Mum. Do you remember how I used to make your clothes when you were younger? How proud you used to be when people complimented your handmade dresses and sweaters? You used to tell everyone that your mum was an artist. Her voice was smaller now, less certain. That was different. We were different then. No, Emma, you were different then. I am the same person who has been working 2 jobs to fill that college fund. I am the same person who has not bought herself new clothes in 3 years, so every extra dollar could go toward your education. But you have decided that the person who sacrifices everything for you is not worth defending when your new friends mock her efforts. I could hear her crying now, but I was not finished. Do you want to know what it felt like to stand in my own kitchen and listen to my daughter call 4 months of love and sacrifice cheap? Do you want to know what it felt like to watch you laugh along when your friends ridiculed the person who has devoted her entire adult life to your happiness? I am sorry, she whispered. I did not mean it like that. I was just trying to fit in. And now you can fit in without my help, I said. You can figure out how to pay for college without relying on the cheap efforts of your embarrassing mother. I hung up before she could respond. My hands were shaking, but it was not from fear or regret. It was from the rush of finally speaking my truth, of finally standing up for myself after years of being taken for granted. Emma called back immediately, then again, and again. I let every call go to voicemail. That evening, I went home to a house that felt different, lighter somehow. The cardigan still sat in its box in Emma's room, untouched since the birthday party. I wondered if she would ever understand what it represented, or if she would continue to see it as just another example of her mother's embarrassing limitations. It did not matter anymore. For the first time in years, I was living for myself rather than for someone else's ungrateful expectations. 3 weeks later, Emma came home. Emma arrived on a Thursday evening looking like she had not slept in days. Her usually perfect appearance was disheveled. Her designer clothes wrinkled her confident demeanor, replaced by something I had never seen before. Genuine humility. She found me in my sewing room working on a new project. A baby blanket for my co-worker's daughter, who had just announced her pregnancy. The soft yellow yarn felt soothing between my fingers as I worked the simple pattern. Mom. Emma stood in the doorway, uncertain. Can we talk? I did not look up from my knitting. Of course. How is school going? She sat down in the old armchair across from my work table, the same chair where she used to sit and watch me create beautiful things for her. I had to take out student loans, she said quietly. The interest rate is horrible, and I will be paying them off for years. I also had to get a job in the campus dining hall, 20 hours a week at minimum wage. I continued knitting, keeping my expression neutral. That sounds challenging. It is, she admitted. I had to drop my art history class because it conflicts with my work schedule, and I had to move out of the nice dorm into the cheapest housing option available. She was waiting for me to express sympathy, to offer solutions, to step in and fix everything like I always had before. But I just kept working on the baby blanket, creating something beautiful for someone who would appreciate it. Mum, I wrote you a letter, Emma said finally. She pulled a folded piece of paper from her pocket. I have been working on it for weeks, trying to figure out how to say everything I need to say. I set down my knitting and looked at my daughter for the first time since she had entered the room. She looked older somehow, like she had aged months in the few weeks since our last conversation. I do not need to read a letter, Emma. If you have something to say, just say it. She unfolded the paper with trembling hands. I wrote it down because I wanted to make sure I got it right, because I have gotten so many things wrong lately. Her voice broke on the last words, and for the first time in weeks, I felt a flicker of the old protective instinct. But I suppressed it. Emma needed to learn to handle her own emotions, her own mistakes. I have been thinking about what you said. She began reading from her letter. About the cardigan, about the sacrifice, about everything you have done for me over the years. And I finally understand what you were trying to tell me. She looked up from the paper, tears streaming down her face. I have been working in that dining hall scrubbing pots and serving food for 35 cents above minimum wage, and all I can think about is you. How many hours you must have worked to save for my college fund. How many times you must have been tired and sore and still kept going because you love me. I felt my own eyes beginning to tear up, but I forced myself to remain composed. Words were easy. Actions were what mattered. Emma continued reading. The cardigan was not cheap, Mum. It was the most expensive gift anyone has ever given me because it cost you 4 months of your life. And I threw it away like it meant nothing because I was too stupid and selfish to understand what real value looks like. She folded the letter and looked directly at me. I called Sarah and Madison and told them what I had done. I told them how much time and money you spent on that gift, and how I betrayed you in front of them. Do you know what they said? I waited. They said I was crazy for caring about some old woman's hurt feelings. They said you were being manipulative and controlling by taking the college money. They said I should cut you off completely and prove my independence. Emma took a shaky breath. That is when I finally understood the difference between real friends and people who just want to use you for entertainment. Real friends would never ask me to choose between them and my family. They would never laugh at someone who loved me enough to sacrifice for me. She stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the garden where David and I had planted roses during our first year in this house. I do not deserve your forgiveness, she said finally. And I do not expect you to give me back the college money. I need to learn to take care of myself to understand what things actually cost. But I was hoping maybe you could teach me. I set down my knitting needles. Teach you what? How to knit, she said simply. How to make beautiful things with my own hands. How to put love into something instead of just expecting other people to provide it for me. For the first time since her birthday, I smiled. It takes patience, Emma, and practice. And you have to be willing to make mistakes and start over when you get things wrong. I think I am ready to learn those things, she said, if you are willing to teach me. I looked at my daughter, really looked at her, and saw something I had been missing for months. I saw the little girl who used to sit in that armchair and watch me create magic with yarn and needles. I saw the teenager who wore my handmade prom dress with pride. And I saw a young woman who was finally beginning to understand the difference between price and value, between fashion and love. "We will start with something simple," I said, reaching for my basket of yarn. "Maybe a scarf. Nothing fancy, just basic stitches." Emma's face lit up with the first genuine smile I had seen from her in months. "Can I sit in my old chair?" "Of course," I said. "That is your spot." As Emma settled into the familiar armchair, and I began showing her how to hold the needles, I felt something shift in the air between us. We had a long way to go, but for the first time in months, we were moving in the right direction. The college fund was gone, and it was not coming back. Emma would graduate with debt, and she would work hard for years to pay it off. But maybe, just maybe, she would also graduate with something more valuable, an understanding of what real love looks like, and the knowledge that respect and gratitude are not optional in any relationship, even between mothers and daughters. 2 months have passed since Emma came home with her letter of apology. As I sit here in my sewing room this evening, I can hear her in the kitchen making dinner for both of us. She learned to cook out of necessity at college, and she has been practicing her new skills every time she visits. The relationship between us is not the same as it was before her birthday. In many ways, it is better. We talk differently now, more honestly. Emma asks about my day at work and actually listens to the answer. She notices when I am tired and suggests I rest instead of assuming I will always be available to serve her needs. Last week, she finished her first knitted scarf. It is lumpy and uneven with several dropped stitches and one section where she clearly lost track of her pattern. It is also the most beautiful thing she has ever made because she made it with her own hands and her own effort. She wore it to campus despite the warm weather, telling anyone who asked that her mother was teaching her to knit. The cardigan still sits in its box in Emma's room. Sometimes I find her looking at it, running her fingers over the intricate pattern she once dismissed as worthless. She has not asked to keep it, and I have not offered. Some gifts need to be earned twice. Emma's college life has changed dramatically. Without unlimited access to my savings account, she has learned to budget carefully, to distinguish between wants and needs, to appreciate things she once took for granted. She no longer spends time with Sarah and Madison, who apparently lost interest in her friendship once she could not afford their expensive lifestyle. Instead, she has found new friends among the students who work and study and understand that money does not grow on trees. She talks about them with genuine affection rather than the desperate social climbing that characterized her old relationships. She will graduate with student loan debt, as I intended, but she will also graduate with work experience, time management skills, and a realistic understanding of what it costs to build a life. These are gifts I could never have given her by continuing to smooth every obstacle from her path. As for me, I have used some of the money to finally replace my 13-year-old car with something reliable. I bought myself new clothes for the first time in years. I even took a weekend trip to visit my sister, something I had been putting off for financial reasons. But most importantly, I have reclaimed my sense of self-worth. I no longer accept disrespect in the name of love. I no longer sacrifice my dignity for someone else's comfort. I no longer allow anyone to treat my efforts as worthless, no matter how much I care about them. The handmade gifts I create now go to people who understand their value. My co-worker's baby daughter will grow up wrapped in blankets made with love and skill. My elderly neighbor wears the shawl I made her to church every Sunday, telling everyone who compliments it about my talent and generosity. I have learned that love without boundaries is not really love at all. It is enablement, and it helps no one in the long run. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do is allow someone to face the consequences of their choices. Emma's 20th birthday taught us both lessons we could not have learned any other way. She learned that relationships require mutual respect and gratitude. I learned that my worth is not measured by how much I am willing to sacrifice, but by how much I am willing to stand up for myself. Have you ever had to make a difficult choice to teach someone you love about respect and consequences? I would love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please give it a like and share it with someone who might need to hear it. And do not forget to subscribe for more real-life stories about the complex relationships that shape our lives. Thank you for taking the time to listen to my story. I hope it reminds you that your efforts and sacrifices have value and that you deserve to be treated with appreciation and respect by everyone in your life, including those you love most. Remember, true love honors the giver as much as it cherishes the gift. Until next time, take care of yourselves and each other.